Doja Cat never expected her dad to expose this. Doja Cat was always larger than life on stage, known for her bold personality, her infectious energy, and a unique talent that could capture millions of hearts with just a single song. She had built a career that most could only dream of. Fans adored her confidence, her quirky humor, and the fearless way she expressed herself. But behind the fame, the awards, and the glamorous lifestyle, there was a part of Doja Cat's life that very few people ever got to see: her personal world, her private struggles, and most importantly, her relationship with her father. It was a relationship that had always been complicated, layered with love but also with moments of distance, and one unexpected afternoon changed everything. Her father had never been one to seek the spotlight. Growing up, Doja remembered him as quiet, thoughtful, and protective. He was always in the background, quietly supporting her dreams, but never pushing himself into her spotlight. Their relationship had always been respectful, yet there was a distance, a subtle barrier that neither had fully broken through. As Doja became a global superstar, that distance seemed to grow even wider. Phone calls were brief, and their conversations rarely delved into personal matters. But on this particular day, something happened that she could have never anticipated. It started with a simple knock at her studio door. Her father entered carrying an old, slightly worn box. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, but the way he held it, with a mixture of hesitation and quiet pride, made Doja curious and a little uneasy. "I think it's time you see this," he said softly. Doja hesitated for a moment, unsure what he could possibly be showing her, but she trusted him enough to let him place the box on the table. What she discovered inside would take her on an emotional journey she hadn't expected. The box was filled with a mix of old letters, personal journals, and recordings from years ago. Some were videos of her early performances in local competitions, raw and unpolished but full of passion. Others were letters she had written to herself as a teenager, expressing fears, doubts, and insecurities that she had never shared with anyone. There were even notes from her father, documenting little moments of pride, advice, and reminders of her strength when she doubted herself. Each item felt like a window into a time she had almost forgotten, a time before fame, before awards, and before the pressures of a world watching her every move. As Doja sifted through the contents, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over her. At first, she felt shocked and a little embarrassed. These were intimate parts of her life, memories she had never intended to revisit, let alone have someone else hold. She felt vulnerable, like her private thoughts and struggles had been quietly exposed. Her father, noticing her hesitation, reassured her. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," he said gently. "I just wanted you to remember how far you've come." Slowly, the initial shock began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of understanding. She realized that her father's intention was never to shame or undermine her, but to celebrate her journey. Each letter, each recording, each note told a story of resilience, growth, and perseverance. She remembered the nights she stayed up practicing, the moments she doubted herself, the times she considered giving up, and how, despite it all, she had continued to push forward. Seeing it through her father's eyes gave her a new perspective on her own strength. The afternoon became a turning point for their relationship. They reminisced about old memories, laughed over awkward early performances, and even shed tears over moments that had shaped them both. Doja began to understand her father in a way she never had before, seeing not just a parent but a guide who had silently carried her dreams alongside her, protecting them and nurturing them in his own quiet way. That simple box, filled with memories, had bridged the gap that had existed between them for so long. By the end of the day, what had initially felt like an exposure had transformed into a gift. Doja felt a renewed sense of connection with her father, a deeper appreciation for the journey they had shared, and a quiet gratitude for the private moments that shaped her into the person she had become. While the world would never see the contents of that box, the experience reminded her of something far more important than fame or recognition: the power of family, trust, and vulnerability. For Doja Cat, the revelation was more than a shock. It was a lesson. She realized that behind every confident performance, every viral hit, and every public persona, there existed layers of human experience shaped by love, struggle, and guidance. And though no one else would know what her father had preserved, that day marked a moment of understanding, healing, and closeness that would stay with her forever. A secret gift from the man who had always been quietly cheering her on from behind the scenes. Doja Cat had always been known for her bold personality, her creativity, and the way she could captivate millions with just a single song. But behind the glitz, the awards, and the bright lights, there was a part of her life that few people ever got to see: her relationship with her dad. Most fans assumed he was just another supportive parent, attending award shows or cheering from the sidelines. But the truth, as it turns out, was far more complicated. One day, something completely unexpected happened, something that shook Doja to her core, and it all started with a casual visit from her father. Her dad had always been a quiet man, protective in his own way but also fiercely private. Growing up, Doja remembered him as someone who gave her space to grow, yet at times she felt there was a distance she could never cross. Over the years, as she skyrocketed to fame, that distance seemed to grow even more. They rarely talked about personal matters. Their conversations were often brief, polite, or surface level. But on this particular day, her father walked into her studio, carrying an old box she had never seen before. A box that held memories from a life she had almost forgotten. Curiosity mixed with unease as she watched him place the box on the counter. "I think it's time you see this," he said softly. Inside, Doja found old journals, handwritten letters, and even recordings from her early performances, things she had thought were long lost. But what caught her off guard wasn't just the nostalgia. It was the fact that her dad had saved these for a reason. He had taken it upon himself to preserve a side of her life that no one else had seen, a side that revealed vulnerability, raw emotions, and moments of self-doubt that contrasted sharply with the confident persona she showed the world. As she flipped through the letters, she realized that her father had documented her journey in detail: the first time she doubted her talent, the moments she almost gave up, and even the songs she had written in secret, never meant for public ears. Her heart raced, a mixture of awe and panic flooding in. She had never imagined anyone, especially her dad, would expose these private pieces of her life. To her, they were intimate fragments, and seeing them compiled and preserved by someone else felt deeply personal and, in a strange way, invasive. But as she read further, the panic slowly turned into understanding. Her dad hadn't meant to embarrass her or undermine her in any way. Instead, he had wanted to remind her of how far she had come, to show her the path she had traveled, the struggles she had overcome, and the growth she had achieved. Each letter, each recording, was a testament to her resilience. For the first time in a long while, Doja felt a profound connection to her father, realizing that his way of showing love and pride was different but deeply meaningful. By the end of the day, the shock had settled into a bittersweet warmth. Doja understood that her dad's actions, though unexpected, were a gesture of care and respect. They laughed over the awkwardness of the old recordings, reminisced about childhood moments, and even talked about the pressures of fame that had often left them both silent. That single afternoon changed everything. They had crossed the distance that had always existed between them. And though the world would never see the contents of that box, the experience reminded Doja of the importance of family, trust, and embracing vulnerability, even in a life lived under the spotlight. In the end, what seemed like an exposure turned out to be a gift, one that not only reconnected her with her dad, but also gave her a deeper understanding of herself. It was a moment that no fan could witness, a private chapter of her life that revealed the human behind the superstar. And for Doja Cat, that revelation was more powerful than any song, any award, or any headline. By the time the sun began to set, Doja Cat felt a warmth she hadn't realized she was missing. That box, once a symbol of shock and exposure, had transformed into a bridge between her and her father. A bridge built from love, memories, and shared history. She looked at him and saw not just a parent but a quiet hero who had been there for every struggle, every doubt, and every triumph, often without her even noticing. In that moment, Doja understood something profound. Fame and fortune could give the world 1,000 voices, but they could never replace the power of a single connection, the kind that sees you completely flaws and all, and still believes in you. She smiled, tears brimming in her eyes, and whispered, "I finally get it. I finally see you." And in that simple exchange, years of distance melted away, leaving only trust, love, and a bond stronger than any headline, song, or applause could ever create. That day, Doja realized that the greatest revelations aren't always meant for the public, they're meant for the heart. And as she hugged her father tightly, she knew that some secrets, even when exposed, could turn into the most beautiful gifts of all. From that moment on, she carried not just her fame, but a deeper understanding of herself, her journey, and the quiet hero who had always been there, silently shaping the superstar she had become.